Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is the woman chess grandmaster Atusa Purkashian, and today I want to analyze a very important game in a big tournament, Tata Steel, which is in Netherlands. And I'm so sorry that the quality of this video is not that high. I'm away from home and I don't have my camera or even my mic. So sorry about that. But I make sure that for next videos, I will use my good camera and also mic for my YouTube channel. Okay, so today I'm going to show you a game between Fabiano Caruana versus Magnus Carlsen. Many of you guys know that these two players played in World Championship match a couple of years ago, so they are familiar with their style. And let's dive into it and see how the game went. So this game happened in the 8th round of Tata Steel. Today, I believe it was the 10th round, so it was about 2 days ago. And Fabiano is playing as white and Magnus is playing as black. Fabiano started with e4, Magnus played e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5. Okay, this opening's name is Ruy Lopez, or Spanish. You know that Ruy Lopez was a Spanish priest in 17th century, so that's why it has two names. So black played a6, which is a usual move in Spanish opening. Bishop a4, knight f6. So all of these moves are theory and main lines. So castle, bishop e7, rook e1. And here, Magnus played b5. Fabiano played bishop b3 here, castle. And here we have martial attack because if white plays c3, black wants to push the pawn to d5 in just one tempo. If black plays d6 here instead of castling, this is a normal Spanish, which is not martial attack. And black is gonna castle, bishop e7, sometimes knight a5. So there are a lot of lines here. But if black castles short, black prepares to push the pawn to d5. So after short castle here, white played a4. a4 is kind of like anti-martial. White doesn't want to get the pawn because if white plays c3 here, black can play d5. I'm going to show you the line so you get familiar with this line. E takes d5, knight takes d5. And apparently the pawn on d5 is hanging, right? So we can take the pawn, but the point here is that after c6, black is going to defend the knight on d5, and black's idea is to play bishop d6, queen h4, and black can conduct an attack on the king side. So black has enough compensation, or near, enough compensation on the king side here. So that's why Fabiano didn't want to go to martial attack. So he played a4. a4 is attacking the pawn, and notice that here pushing the pawn doesn't make sense because after a takes d5, the pawn on a6 is pinned. So after a4, black played b4. White played a5. a5, the idea is to basically avoid a5, and white gets more space in this position, and the pawn on b4 is a little bit, more vulnerable. But sometimes, of course, we can play c3. So more or less, it's about space mostly. So black played b6 here, c3, rook b8, and here white played h3. Maybe h3 is not the best try here. Computer doesn't like this move, but it makes sense because in such positions, white usually wants to avoid bishop g4. So it's kind of like a prophylactic move. So black played h6, which computer doesn't like. Again, computer says it's a mistake, but I think these moves are playable, completely playable. d4, bc3, bc3, d4, and knight takes d4. Okay, bishop d7, bishop f4. Notice that we can't move the bishop to e3 because then the pawn on e4 will be hanging. So bishop f4, knight e5, and knight a3. Another move here for white is bishop g3. So white can prepare for f4 later on to attack this knight on e5. But Fabiano played knight a3, rook e8. Rook e8 is also a typical move in such positions because one of the weaknesses is on e4. Black wants to put pressure on e4, and later on black is going to move the bishop to f8. White played bishop g3, bishop f8, f4. The knight is put under attack. Knight c6. White played e5. Okay, e5 is kind of like a committal move. When you play such moves, you need to, calculate until the end. Another interesting move here was bishop h4 to pin the knight, but Fabi thought, okay, he's gonna play e5 anyway. So de5, fe5, and then knight takes d4. Knight takes d4 was a great move. C takes d4, bishop c6, and here Magnus played a brilliant move, bishop c6. As you can see, 2 exclamation marks. It means that it's an excellent move. It's a fabulous move. And Magnus is setting up a trap here, which actually Fabi fell for it. So here Fabi played bishop c2, which is a blunder, but probably a better move here is just to play, rook c1 and get the rook to the game, attack the bishop and so on. But Fabi played bishop c2, and now the bishop, after bishop c2, the bishop is no longer controlling this square. So black can play queen d5, a great move. Black can create this queen-bishop battery, and now black is threatening the pawn on g2, which white needs to protect. Otherwise, it's just one move checkmate. So white played rook e2 to protect the pawn, and black played rook b4. Another brilliant move here. Notice that the pawn on d4 is a weakness, and we are attacking this pawn. If white wants to protect the pawn with the bishop, this is not a good move at all, because black can just checkmate the king in one move. Notice that the bishop is blocking the rook from defending the pawn. So here it's really difficult for white to defend the pawn. So Fabi just moved the king to h2, rook takes d4, and he played queen b1 in this position. Knight e4. Knight e4 maybe is not the best approach to win the game, although this position is winning for black. So black has, many ways to win. This is not the fastest way, but I would say that this is probably the best way to just play solid chess, and you don't want to give your opponent, some chances to counterattack. So that's why he played knight a4. So here, the best move for black is to play rook d2 to move the rook to the 7th rank and attack the rook on e2, which is the defender of the position. So after rook takes d2, we can play queen takes d2 and we are attacking the pawn on g2. And if white doesn't take the rook, so let's say if white moves the queen to f1, we can capture the rook and then we can play knight h5. Notice that again, queen h5 is not possible because the pawn on g2 will be hanging. Okay, so let's go back. Magnus played knight e4. I think Magnus didn't want to give, chances to white here. So that's why he wanted to just go to an end game, which is winning, and it's not, it's tricky. So bishop takes e4, rook takes e4, rook takes e4, queen takes e4, queen takes e4, bishop takes e4. Okay, so we got to an end game with a bishop pair, And you know that bishop pair is an advantage in chess, especially in the end games, which is actually even more important. And also black has an extra pawn. So white played knight c4. It wasn't easy for white to move the rook because the knight was hanging. So white tried to activate the knight. Rook b8, rook c1, rook b5, putting pressure on the pawns. e6, maybe not the best move, but white's position is really difficult. So white played e6, f takes e6, bishop takes c7, rook c5, attacking the bishop and pinning the rook. Bishop f4 and bishop d5. So here, after moving the bishop to d5, Fabiano Caruana resigned. But the point here is that, let's say if the knight moves to e5, we can play rook takes c1, bishop takes c1, and then we can move the bishop to b4, and the pawn on a5 is also hanging in this position. So if we are up 2 pawns with bishop pair, it's completely winning for black. I hope you guys enjoyed this game. If you have any questions or suggestions, please write me in comment section and tell me, who do you think will win the Tata Steel Tournament? We have 2 sections. We have Masters Tournament and also Challengers. And tell me about your favorite player. You think who's going to win the tournament? So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.